Today we're looking at Private Reserve's Claret. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Private Reserve's Claret is a magenta ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that doing multiple chromatographies has taught me a lot. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and I immediately dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a darker magenta line across the bottom. That magenta pushes its way up and we get a kind of purpley line and then a very, very light blue line across the top. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. We see a much darker, and it is a magenta line on the bottom, and this pink that pushes up to the light blue, but none of that dark purpley blue at the top. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, we see that it holds up pretty well. It doesn't seem to explode out all over the place and feather. It looks like it'll stay readable, which is very nice. Water reactivates and pulls a bunch of the ink up, but not all of it. It seems to have quite a bit of hold on, really moving the darker tones, but none of the lighter tones. Pen flush pulls a bit more of this ink off the pen, or off the paper, but not as much as I really would have expected. Bleach is completely removing it from the paper, leaving a little bit of yellow staining behind. And I'm hoping it wouldn't take bleach to get this out of your pens. Now, to get my average dry time, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nibs. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Private Reserve's Claret has a viscosity of 1.42, which makes it a very wet ink. To get my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nib. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Private Reserve's Claret has an average dry time of 17 seconds, which makes it completely average, along with being normal. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding. We have no ghosting. And with the 1.1, it's, there's no feather. But it's tough to say, so I'm pulling out an old sample. Because look at this. This is the diamine claret from yesterday. We have spread. We have spread on Clairefontaine paper. I mean, this is a good paper. It shouldn't do that. The ink itself is just so thick that I think that's what it is caused to happen. It's a nice, interesting color. It performs very well. But here we have spread. We have no feathering, no halo, no sheen or shade. With the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We definitely get shade through the whole writing. 11 seconds to dry. The medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Shade. Tons of it all the way through. 18 seconds to dry. I think I just blew by it because I'm very underwhelmed by this color. That's all. Just 18 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us we're going to get a ton of color variation through the writing, which we did get. And the smear test says we could recover this if we were to smear while we were writing. Rhodia paper gives us no bleed. It does give us ghosting. The 1.1 gives no feathering. It does have spread. It has no halo, no sheen, and no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It does show shading. The ink is just staying in place, so where there's more of it, it's taking longer to dry. 19 seconds. It's keeping the shading though. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It does have shading all the way through all of the writing. 30 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us that we will get color variation. Even on Tomaway River. Not as well on camera, but we will get color variation. It's nice. It's not as much as we would hope for, but it's nice. It's there. The smear test says I don't get to recover it. Rhodia paper. Rhodia paper gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread. I'm going to call it no spread just to go ahead and be on the side of the ink. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I don't think it would stop you from being able to use this. I think there might be some spread. We can debate it another time. If you think that's spread, let me know. If you don't, let me know. I don't know what else to tell you. No halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine gives us a lighter tone for sure, with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, but shading all the way through all of the ink. 9 seconds to dry. Now the interesting thing to me is I love shade in ink. For the most part, when ink has really nice shading, I can go with it. So here's where I'm taking my notes. And with the broad, we don't get nearly as much color variation. We do get color variation. This is the Retro 51 broad nib. It's where I'm just taking notes for this. And the thing is, this ink has a whole bunch of really interesting qualities. It performs very well, with the exception of spreading out of the 1.1. I'm just not interested in this color. In this color. Not the color claret or claret, but this one. But there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just not interested in it, even though it shows a bunch of really nice qualities and it writes really well. The medium nib. The medium nib gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, tons of shading the whole way through. 17 seconds to dry. It performs really well. The scrubby in both the extra fine and the medium show us that we would get great color variation, and we do. The smear test says if we make a mistake and smear while we're writing, we can recover it. So I test this on TWSBI paper. This is not bleed. This is not bleed through. It doesn't line up with the writing underneath. So this is me being sloppy. So we have no bleeding. We have no real ghosting. I know it looks like that. It looks way worse on camera than it does in person. The 1.1, we still have spread. We have no feather. No halo, no sheen. We do have shading in the 1.1. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Shading all the way through, and 10 seconds to dry. This TWSBI paper is fantastic. It's being really overlooked by the community. I don't see people really talking good things about it. The TWSBI notebook is really what I use as my ink journal. It's where I keep track of it all because it generally performs very well for the ink. 10 seconds to dry. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, shade all the way through. Tons of great shading. Tons of it all the way through. Just the color itself doesn't get me. Not this one. 15 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby both show us we're going to get plenty of shading in all of this writing, and we do. The smear test says we would likely be able to recover the smear. And the last one I'm going to test is Word Notebook. Now, I had my suspicions on Word Notebook when I picked it up, so I didn't actually test it with the medium. I just test it with the extra fine. I write the top with the medium. Thank you, Vita, for teaching all of us that. So we definitely get bleeding. This touched the page underneath, but I was putting it on stupid thick. We definitely get ghosting. The medium at the top gives us definite spread. It does feather. It doesn't give us halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine spreads and feathers all over the place with no halo, no sheen, no shade. The scrubby shows us we're not going to get any color variation, but the good news here, the real light, is it doesn't smear. It takes only 1 second to dry. There is no smear. I write 1 second, which sometimes could mean completely instantaneous. I just round to the nearest second. So that's what I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Private Reserve's Claret, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I've chosen Diamine Moss because it's a very nice green ink. Before we get to my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Private Reserve's Claret? While it gives interesting amounts of color variation, I find the color itself on paper to be rather dull and uninteresting. And that's kind of all I have for it. Thanks for watching.